It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays, and this is the last Wellness Wednesday of 2021. Next week is going to be pre-recorded content that's sort of holiday specific. So the next Wellness Wednesday will be in 2022. Very exciting. 2022 hopefully is going to be a big year for Wellness Wednesday type content with the sort of one-on-one chat sessions that are going to be available. Some people have reached out to me privately, said, I'm not sure I can wait. I need somebody to talk to now. So, I'm making those exceptions. What we're going to do early in the new year is set up an email address for that service and start with that. So while the finishing touches are being put on the website with the fancy like self-booking calendar and everything like that, we can still start the process. As I've been doing this sort of informal thing, it's like, yeah, okay, there's a few more things I need to add to this because we want to balance need and reliability and, the fact that I'm doing a lot right now. So more on that in the new year. Today, we are talking about, I forgot, Patreon. Wellness Wednesday supported by Patreon. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Lena K. This is where the money for Wellness Wednesday comes from right now. That's the nice thing about the one-on-one is there'll be a supplement for this stuff. But a request that I got in one of the comments, and I thought this is a good thing for this time of year, even though it bumped some of the other requests, but dealing with passive aggressiveness, since we're all going to be sitting around various types of, whether it's over Zoom or whether it's, just dealing with people in the last few shopping days before Christmas or dealing with your family, there's going to be a lot of passive aggressiveness. Passive aggressiveness to me is one of those things that just makes me see red. And I'm going to give you my tips for having it get under my skin less. I admit I am not great at tolerating passive aggressiveness. And part of it is I come from a background where there is a lot of passive aggressiveness. It took a lot of work for me to stop engaging in that. And so to me, it's like, an alcoholic with booze. No, abstinence, me, don't do it. Everybody has moments of snark. Everybody has moments where something comes out and you're trying to suppress your irritation and it doesn't quite work. That to me is not the same as a passive aggressive person or someone with a habit of being passive aggressive. You can catch yourself when you do that and correct on the fly when you're aware it's sort of slipped or something like that. But truly passive aggressive people, there's a commonality at the core. And there is so much of this out there, which is what you see me already going, at some point in their lives, passive aggressive people learned anger is bad, being upset is bad, and conflict is to be avoided at all costs. I call it the nice game. I hate passive aggressiveness so much I named the bad guys in the Boss Fight web series Nice. Because one of my mantras for life is I'm not nice, I'm fair. And there's a huge difference. I prefer to have small conflicts early than big conflicts later. And for people who are conflict averse, it's oil and water. One of the things I learned with creative endeavors is that your conflict style really matters. You need a team with similar conflict styles. And, one of the things we're trying to do with the Song of Sparkle Muffin game is to make sure that we have a team of people that want to have small conflicts early instead of big conflicts later. And it's meant that we've tried some people on and the passive aggressiveness started, and we did an accountability check, and they decided to leave the team, and that's fine because it was a small conflict early instead of a big conflict later. And you start seeing patterns with people who are passive aggressive. Certain subjects, they will become more passive aggressive than others. Some people are just across the board because they're so afraid of conflict. They're so afraid of anger. A lot of people have been taught that anger is bad in schools, or low key companies run by like vulnerable narcissists who use this stuff to control people. Anger is always bad except when they do it, right? And even when they do it, it's sort of this shaming, like, what did we learn? You're being very aggressive, all that stuff. New character voice right there. You can tell the people I dealt with who did that what they sounded like. These environments do not create spaces that allow people to have conflicts and work them out. And that matters. A lot of passive aggressiveness is driven by fear when somebody isn't using it as a weaponized form. And there's a big difference between somebody who's using it because they're literally afraid they'll get yelled at or rejected. That is a very different thing than someone who uses it intentionally to control. But there is overlap. There are some people that start off one way and cross into the other. It's of benefit to figure out whether these are just people who are really afraid of rejection or whether these are people who are using passive aggressiveness to control the people around them. And what I've found is that people who are legitimately afraid will appreciate what you do and get better as, you do little validation things. You ask them what's wrong. You give them the space to kind of talk it out. Somebody who's weaponized passive aggression, they will take more and more and more liberties the more opportunities you give them to actually, talk without like blowing up, because that's another self-defense mechanism. So if you give somebody like 3 or 4 opportunities and it works out and they get worse instead of better, that's probably not a salvageable situation. That's not somebody who's actually interested in meeting you halfway. That's not somebody who's interested in working on their avoidance issues. That's somebody who's learned to weaponize it. And those people do exist. And those are people you either have to cut off contact with or minimize contact with. So that's a good little test. How an environment handles failure or mistakes is a big thing too. And this is not necessarily something you have control over in every environment. I mean, I've worked very hard to kind of shape my life so I can have a lot of control over how these things are handled, because I got sick of working in toxic environments for toxic people. Obviously, this is not possible for everybody, especially if you work at a large corporation where passive aggressiveness runs rampant. You can insulate certain social groups or certain, the term safe space is ruined, but certain places you can go where you'll get a real conversation with somebody who, doesn't just avoid conflict at all costs. And doesn't do those snippy little things because they think it's better than being, look, what's going on? Okay, like, can we talk about this? It is a real pressure release valve to be able to talk to people who actually are accountable. And the cool thing about groups that allow people to make mistakes, allow people to fail, are accountable when somebody makes a mistake, is when there is cause to celebrate. I find they're extremely supportive environments. These are people who will cheer on your accomplishments because they've been with you through the stuff that didn't go as well, right? When people can admit that something didn't work out, those are really, really productive environments. And I think in order to do anything remotely hard, you need that, because people have to be prepared to fail before they're ever going to succeed. It's that whole, what is it, Wayne Gretzky, who the shot you don't take is the one you miss 100% of the time, or something like that. Easy to say, hard to do when you come from an environment that, severely punished failure. The tough part for dealing with profoundly passive aggressive people is the balance between holding them accountable and validating them when you can, right? It is very difficult to validate a person in the throes of passive aggression, because passive aggression is an inherently invalidating tactic, right? The strategy that's given, it's not explained well in various columns and things like that. So here's what I've found works. It's sort of asymmetric, right? When someone's being passive aggressive, the goal is to sort of respond to, and this is a bit of guessing, which is why I'm very hesitant. This is an advance move. And this is why I'm really hesitant to give this. So be aware, if this is something you feel really uncomfortable with, don't do it. Just say nothing. Just do your own little self-talk of, this person is avoiding this. They're afraid of this, they think conflict is bad. They think it's to be avoided at all costs. They think anger is bad. They can't admit to themselves that they're angry. And there are a lot of people out there like that. Holy shit. I don't trust somebody who can't admit that they're ever angry. So, if you want to attempt an advance move, you can say, when someone's being passive aggressive, you can say, this sounds very difficult for you. That's hard. You have to make it seem like you're on the same team as them, even when it's annoying as hell. And I have had to do this with some very challenging people, and I am exhausted for weeks after I have to do this sometime. But it does improve their behavior, even in small amounts, right? It's that thing of, I understand this is difficult for you. It's putting you in a bad situation. I don't feel good about that. And then there's the part where you can't reward them for their passive aggressiveness, even as you're validating the feelings underlying the passive aggressiveness. So for instance, if somebody's, the passive aggressiveness that I can't stand is, I don't want to get involved in a conflict with a third party, and then they get involved, talking about the third party, obviously advocating the third party's position to you after they've said they don't want to get involved. And if somebody says they don't want to get involved, for instance, you have to hold them to that. You said you didn't want to get involved. You said you didn't want to get involved. This is involving yourself. And they'll go, you're getting upset. They will try to shame you for being authentic about it. And that's the part where you either get up and walk away, or you take a breath, or you just keep. I respect your desire to not get involved. You don't need to get involved. This is between me and them. I'll talk to them about this, not to you. For instance, or somebody's acting so hard done by because they invited, well, hopefully not this year, they didn't invite 20 people over for a meal, and oh, it's so much work, you know. Yeah, it is so much work. Maybe next time we don't invite so many people. This is too much work for you. It's amazing how quickly they'll change their tune, because what they really want is some appreciation or some help, and they don't know how to ask for it. That's a really additional, really frustrating type of passive aggressiveness, when some people feel help as vulnerability, so they will complain about not getting help in lieu of asking for help. Drives me fucking bonkers. You know, oh, I worked so hard. Oh, there's all this stuff. Well, why don't you ask for help? You know, because they want somebody to offer. They want people to come to them, not ask. Partially, and sometimes it's an example of somebody they looked up to and they haven't effectively separated themselves from. The truth is, at the end of the day, no matter what their understandable and possibly valid reasons are for being passive aggressive, they're being passive aggressive. And you can't reward the behavior. Meaning don't give them what they want. So if you think somebody's hinted at help, it's like, oh, that's unfortunate. It sounds like a lot of work. Don't jump, because they're suggesting how high, right? And that is tough. That is tough, because what somebody who's chronically passive aggressive will do is, you know, go and gossip. Gossip and passive aggressiveness are two peas in a pod. They are two bugs in a rug. You'll usually find one when you find the other, because they're both toxic behaviors, right? They don't want the conflict with you right in front of them. They will attempt to build sort of an alliance or a sense of closeness with other people by gossiping about somebody who's not there. And gossip is friggin' toxic. There's one thing about talking about somebody when they're not there because you're concerned about them. There's another thing of sort of gleefully, oh, did you see that? You know, that whole thing. Big, big, big difference. Big difference. And for me, if somebody's gossiping, if I can, I leave. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be associated with it. People who know me at all, who have any sense of self-awareness, know I don't do gossip. It's a big rule of mine. And mature people respect that, right? Because I have conversations out of concern for people. I have conversations about somebody, say they're struggling and we want to strategize with somebody to support them best we can. That can't happen if you're gossiping about people. People have to know that if you do have a conversation about them, it is to help them, not to undermine them, or not just to smack talk them behind their back. So that's another thing. But the best thing, simple to do, not the advanced move that you're probably sitting here going, what? I don't get that. Because it's an advanced move, right? If you're just starting with this, the best thing to just do is when you feel somebody is being passive aggressive, respond to the feeling, don't give them what they want. That sounds very difficult. I'm sorry you're going through that. Or, oh, that's really unfortunate. Must be tough. And don't give them what they want. You know? So if you hear that from the kitchen, or somebody's banging dishes because nobody's coming to help. Can you tell this happened in my family quite a bit? You know, slamming it down. What's wrong? Nothing. Okay, they said nothing. Let them do it. I mean, if you don't live there, they'll get pissed off at somebody who's not you after you leave. But there is a lot of truth to the idea that you train people how to treat you. And the passive aggressiveness will get worse before it gets better, because again, these are people who are frightened by authentic exchanges and healthy conflict, any conflict. So it will get worse before it gets better. Sometimes that means somebody's just not going to want to be around you and problem solved, right? You don't have to be around that person anymore. You got to be careful at work because, again, passive aggressive people tend to be backstabbers and they don't see their behavior for what it is. Because these are all survival tactics for the people being passive aggressive. They think this is how everybody is and this is something you have to do because they are avoiding a terrible, no good, very bad thing. So if you can keep in mind that, unless you get somebody who's just being a horrible bully, that they are actually responding out of fear, not evil intent, that can help make the passive aggressiveness less irritating. And if you can keep your irritation level down, it will be much easier to figure out what to do at the time. Now, for people on the autism spectrum who are otherwise neurodivergent, passive aggressiveness is super difficult to parse because it's deliberately not saying what somebody means, right? That's really difficult. Now, the nice thing is if you've disclosed your condition, you could use that and basically say, I'm sensing some nonverbal cues here I don't understand. Can you help me out with that? Because then they're being helpful. They're not starting a conflict. They're being helpful. Now, I guess you could do that if you're a neurotypical person as well, but it is easier for somebody who's being passive aggressive to go, well, if you haven't figured it out, I'm not going to tell you. Whereas if someone is at a legitimate disadvantage there, it's not nice to not clarify for them. So, you can leverage that neurodiversity to just very nicely call them on it of, I'm really sorry, you seem upset, I don't know what's going on here, can you help me out? Because what you're doing is, if they don't, they're violating the nice game, which is anathema to passive aggressive people, because it's, they were just being nice, right? You can do that as a neurotypical person. You have to be a bit more strategic about it. People could just blow up because you've called them on it, right? They don't know what to do. They're terrified of conflict. So boom, explosion instead of passive aggressive, because that's the other avoidant tactic. The problem for these people, the tragedy is they're creating conflicts that don't have to happen because of their passive aggressiveness and their explosiveness. You can't save them from that. You can only, follow up with the, you seem upset. I don't know what's going on. Can you help me out? And if you do the, oh, nothing. Okay. They didn't tell you. And you'll feel mean at first. At least I did, because I knew it wasn't nothing. But when someone says, oh, nothing, you don't take that bait. And the person will get upset with you for not taking the bait. And then you have to respond with, I believe in taking people at their word. If you seem upset and you say nothing's wrong, well, I respect that you didn't want to talk about it then. And I was willing to wait until you were. I'm not going to talk to you if you're going to raise your voice. I'm not going to talk to you if you're going to name call. And I'm not going to talk to you if you continue to ascribe negative motivations to me. But I do want to know what's wrong. And I do want to know why you're upset. We just need to do this in a way that minimizes the conflict. And then you've got them. Because you've said, I want to help you avoid the thing you're afraid of. Right? But they need to do things and they need to be accountable to do that. Now, they may not. They may blow up, call you a bunch of names, so on and so forth. You can't control that. But you treated them with fairness, and anybody watching the whole thing is going to see who remained calm and who didn't. Right? Now, if you're coming from an entire family of passive-aggressive people, everyone will try to paint you as the asshole because they're terrified of your ability to stand your ground. But if you do it enough, and you do it enough, and you do it enough, they will eventually get at least marginally better because you set boundaries and you wouldn't be pushed. And no matter how much they screamed and name called and everything like that, they didn't get what they wanted. And ultimately, people continue to do behaviors. People continue to perform behaviors because they get something out of it. It might not be the healthiest thing, but they get something out of it. If they're not getting some sort of dopamine hit or some sort of, outcome that is desirable to them, they will change their behavior. They might not like you for it, but that's not the goal here. The goal here isn't to make somebody like you, because a passive aggressive person, they don't really like anyone. They're too afraid of conflict to get to know anybody. What you're trying to do is curb the behavior, and that will do that. Interested in your feedback for this, and super happy holidays. Get some rest, eat some good food, play some video games, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.